Hello and welcome back to my channel. I am Amy Rogstad. I'm a designer and illustrator. Today I am painting a painting of some hollies. I wanted to practice drawing faces in the upcoming year, so I'm getting a head start with this illustration, so I decided to make the berries of the holly into little heads. The main tool I'm using throughout this illustration is the Micron Pens. I really like these pens and I use them all the time. They're great because they are archival and they are water resistant. So I tend to use these a lot with watercolor. And usually my process includes inking first and then doing watercolor on top of that. I'm also using my Etcher sketchbook. This is the Everyday sketchbook. So the cover of this one is the white cloth or canvas. And the paper inside of this specific one is cold press. I will say that I don't necessarily like using these pens with cold press paper. I struggle a little bit where you have to kind of go over the lines multiple times for them to show up. It's a lot easier with hot pressed paper to make the ink appear smooth. But that was just my mistake in actually purchasing the sketchbook because I thought I was purchasing hot press, but I accidentally purchased cold press. So needless to say, I'm still going to be using the sketchbook and filling it up and just kind of playing around with it. And I'm also using the TWSBI fountain pen as a liner, as line art as well. I recently purchased this and this is like my second time using it. So I kind of just used it in certain areas because I do not know too much about the ink. I really haven't played around with it too much, so this is just me going and experimenting. So for the faces of the berries, I tried to give them different expressions. I'm using a really basic style. I have a book that I use that has a bunch of expressions and it puts the faces in kind of like this basic structure. I believe the book is the Animator Survival Guide. And I just use like these basic shapes to create the faces and the expressions. So this is something you'll probably see more from me in the upcoming year, as it's something I'm going to start really practicing and trying to learn. And it's definitely outside of my comfort zone. I'm not very good at drawing faces and people and expression, so it's just kind of like my challenge for myself next year. One thing I really like doing when I'm inking is I like to use different sized brushes. So here I'm primarily using the size 005 for all of the line work. And then I'm going into certain areas and I'm using like a size 10 to create a bit more contrast between the different lines. I think this adds a little bit more character. I'm adding in harder shadows where things overlap. And then I'm thickening up the points of the leaves to add a little bit more dimension there. So I'm really sparingly using this thicker brush, which I believe is the size 10. It might be like a 12. but I think it really helps add more interest when you're using different line widths in your inking. So I tried to make this mostly ink-based. All of the details I did with the ink, so like the eyes, the nose, the mouth. And then I incorporate watercolors for the overall color. I'm using the Paul Rubens set. I think you can get this from like AliExpress. The palette has 12 colors in it. They're pretty standard colors. You have your yellows, oranges, pink, purple, blue, green, and then a variety of neutrals and brown colors. I thought the case was really pretty. I honestly bought this because it had a sparkly cover, and I've never tried these watercolors really before. So I did not film painting the leaves because I forgot to press record, but something I did notice right away is that the ink in the TWSBI fountain pen that I was using is not waterproof. So I had some issues with the ink bleeding in certain areas. Luckily I used that pen sparingly. For the most part, I did use the Micron pens. And then one issue I kind of ran across while using this palette is that it slides around. It's not even, so it kind of wobbles and tilts, which I found rather annoying. So I'm probably not going to be using this palette too often, although I will want to use up the paint, so I might try depotting it or something. I also do want to do a light fast test with these paints because I don't know the light fast quality. Generally though, for the most part while I was using these paints, I thought they were pretty good. I didn't have any issues with them. I guess my only question for myself is if they're light fast, so for the time being, I'm just going to be using these in my sketchbook as something to practice with and just play around with. And that's generally what I tend to do with new paints that I buy. I really like doing a light fast test, or I like knowing beforehand if they're light fast before I use them in any work that I'm going to sell. So the watercolors did behave as I expected, no issues. The only issue I ran across was with the ink that came with the TWSBI fountain pen not being waterproof. So I'm probably going to have to find some ink that is waterproof that I can use with that fountain pen, because I will forget and I will make that mistake again. But luckily, this is just my sketchbook and it's a place for mistakes and errors and learning. So I don't really have an issue with it not being perfect. And I'm also using the Winsor Newton Series 7 brush for this as well. I believe it's the size 3 brush. This is one of the brushes I always use. I really like it because it's not too small and it's not too big. I like that you can cover, kind of bigger areas, at least for me, and still get in there with the details because the tip of the brush is really nice and pointed. And I'm practicing adding the dimension into the face. I didn't use a reference for this. I'm kind of just winging it off of what I think the face looks like. Honestly, I was kind of thinking of like when I do my makeup of where I add in like darker colors or lighter colors to add the dimensions so that the face doesn't look flat. It looks sort of like there are points coming out at you. So yeah, again, just playing around and experimenting. And I think this is something that's like really important to do, is just practice, experiment, make mistakes, learn from those mistakes. And I find myself improving faster when I do mistakes and I learn from them, because I feel like you remember it more. And then I'm going back in with the Micron pen to thicken up those eyebrows and add in a little bit more detail. And then I'm using the same color as the berries that I colored them in. I'm just using it thicker to make the lips. And this is my favorite white pen. This is the Uniball Signo. And I'm using this to just add in those highlights of the eyes. I feel like once you do this step, it kind of makes the piece look a little bit more alive. And then finally, as my last step, using the Faber-Castell Polychromos colored pencils. And I'm going in and deepening up those shadows a bit more. I really like using pencil for this step because I like the texture that it gives, and I can be a little bit more specific of the placement of the areas I'm shading. And so this is my finished piece. I had a lot of fun with this. I kind of just used my imagination. I didn't really have any references. I just kind of went in and had fun and just played around with it. And so that is all that I have for this video. I hope you enjoyed watching. Let me know in the comments below what I should paint next. And thanks for watching. Bye!